We're going to do a little experiment this morning. I have in my hand an ordinary whiteboard eraser, and I'm going to hold it about 18 inches or so from the desk, and I'm going to drop it. And I think you all know what's going to happen, right? There you go. Gravity works. Isn't that great? Now, you all knew what was going to happen because you all know about the law of gravity. But there are other words that are used to describe how we know about the natural world, and sometimes we don't use those words correctly. And the word that most people do not use correctly is the word theory. So let's talk a little bit about the scientific method and how I knew that this eraser was going to fall when I dropped it. So if a scientist has an idea, they call it a hypothesis. A hypothesis is not just some wild guess that they come up with. It's an idea that the scientist really thinks might accurately describe the natural world. But they can't just say, hey, I've got a great idea. Isn't it wonderful? Let's vote on it. Science is not a democracy. What they have to do is they have to test the idea using experiments, observations, computer models, and they don't just test it once. They test it many, many times. And then if it happens that it does explain the natural world, then they actually publish it in peer review. And other scientists look at it and they say, hey, I'm going to try to test that same idea. And they test that same idea, not the same way the first scientist did, but in different ways. And if it passes the test and it still explains something in the natural world, they say, great, let's keep testing it. And if all these scientists test this idea in all different ways and it still explains the natural world, in other words, nobody's proven it wrong, then eventually it becomes a theory. So a theory is incredibly well tested. A theory is our best current explanation for something in the natural world. So for example, you call the Big Bang a theory. Now, some people think, oh, that means that the Big Bang is just a guess. No. It means that the Big Bang, the concept of the universe starting as a very small, hot, dense object, has been tested many, many, many times. And it is the best explanation we have about the early universe. Now, you can't really prove something right in science. You just prove it wrong, if you can prove it wrong. So if something has been tested for so long, and we are absolutely sure, well, we think we're absolutely sure, that no one will ever prove it wrong, then we call it a law, like the law of gravity. No matter how many times I drop this eraser, it's going to keep falling. So hopefully now you understand the difference between a guess, a hypothesis, a theory, and a scientific law.